Hello and welcome. My name is Thiago Monteiro. I'm the founder of Toco Marketing, your outsourced marketing team. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Simon Le Grice, a marketer with close to 20 years of experience across a multitude of brands, including Moo.com, Treatwell, Rover, Dog Buddy, and more recently, Creature Comforts. He's super experienced on both the acquisition side, the more analytical side of marketing, but also the branding side. So it's a great person to talk to. And also he has a lot of experience on local marketing, so where your activities need to be constrained by geographical boundaries. I also know him for 12 years now, so it's really great to catch up with him and see how everything's going. Simon, it's great to have you here. We know each other for 12 years, so it's always good to have a formal call. To kick things off, could you introduce yourself a little bit more and give us a sense of the kind of project you typically take on?
Sure thing. Yes, 12 long years, Thiago. 12 long years. I'm Simon. As Thiago mentioned, I've worked startup and scale-ups here in London for almost 20 years now. All in the consumer space. So really, that's what excites me, makes me tick. Is really understanding how startups can come to market and solve problems for consumers, whether that be in marketplaces, in e-com. Live entertainment. I'm really interested in solving the problem for someone and then how you go build their audience around it. So that's pretty much what I've spent 20 odd years doing now, and had the pleasure of working with Thiago at Treatwell many moons ago. That's a little about me.
And in terms of recently, you work with Creature Comforts and you launched, the fifth clinic, if I'm not wrong, and a few more as well. Really congratulations on that. It's not a small feat. What does a typical launch looks like from a marketing standpoint?
Great question. Creature Comforts was my third pet business to get into, albeit the veterinary space is very different from the vet medicine space and pet sitting where I was before. But some of the customer is the same. Right, they're all kind of pet owners, but adding this like hyper local level like you speak to there really does change the game a bit. You can't employ some of the channels that you might usually, or you have to quite heavily adapt something that you're quite used to. So for us, launch is really about partnering with our friends in the property team, figuring out where the clinic's going to be, starting to figure out the audience that is in the area, and then thinking through channel by channel, like what works. There are some staples there, right, that are always part of the plan. Search, albeit there are big challenges with search at that hyperlocal level. Same kind of volume challenges you might start getting into in paid social. We know that Meta loves big audiences, loves big data. So when you try and tell it to go after a postcode, it really does start to freak out. But then like starting to look beyond the web into local old school marketing channels, right? How do you use print? How do you use direct mail? And actually getting through people's letterboxes, events, community building. So that begins to kind of build that plan from kind of digital to real world. Starting way out from opening. It's not a case of the operations team go in, deck the clinic out and open the doors and everything just works. You need to start months in advance beginning to build awareness. Start building this notion that you're coming to the market, begin signing people up, begin building that kind of wait list for the anticipation of opening, and then going into a sales period and activating that list once you open. Then you're into BAU, once the clinic's open, beginning to kind of embed yourself into the community and keep building and building and building.
Okay, that's interesting. And kind of go a little bit deep on that, if you don't mind. A few questions. So obviously, we both spoke. We know each other for some time. Back at Treatwell, we had this ultra local approach as well when we were launching neighborhoods. At that time, the focus was obviously we had a lot of paid search. We had some awareness campaigns going on as well, and then we would, really go in with some offline and the sales team.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the playbook that's still at play, or do you think it's like is Meta now better at delivering local, even with the constraints that we have right now? With the audience sizes, etc. But what is your point of view on that playbook, let's say?
Yeah, I think to address your is meta better point of view, no and yes. So to begin with, no, right? It really, for us at least, you're starting to think about your audience. Like, you're already losing a bunch of people because they're not pet owners. You're already losing a bunch of people because they're not the right affluence or the right demographic. So you're shrinking in your concept of who the customer is. You also have no first party data to feed it, right? So you really do start off at the mercy of the targeting that you're left with in platform. The good news is, if you're in an offline business that is, say, something like Creature Comforts, where they are building a brand and building a chain of veterinary clinics, everyone thereafter, you are building that data, right? So your lists are getting bigger, your customer base, you start to be able to feed data back into the platform. And it's fair to say, not least because of the hard work of the team at Creature Comforts, that we're able to make improvements every single clinic that launched. Yes, we learned a bunch along the way, but I do put decent amount of credit on being able to feed more data to feed the algorithm. So that certainly has helped there. But it does take a real mix to make this work, and on that kind of micro level, challenge being budgets, and sometimes skill set, I think, is the other thing to know. A lot of marketers these days, they cut your teeth on AdWords and Meta, and then you're presented with this opportunity to target hyperlocally through outdoor, and it's a whole new skill to learn, or to find the right media partner to support you with that. How do you do direct mail, right? How does that work? And so for someone that is kind of so used to sitting in front of ads manager, the idea of folding a piece of paper and getting it through someone's door is rather novel. So there are challenges that get presented there on how you go do that, but it does take all of those pieces, I think, for this to work.
Right, so talking about a more complex media mix or marketing mix to make it work for local, what because the audience is not easily accessible or easy, you have to build it, you have to find the right data to feed algorithms, the different ones, and so you can scale it.
Absolutely, and you think as well, like it's hyperlocal, so you know the boundaries of where you're going and the addresses that are in there. So being able to kind of think about locations that are adjacent, or you can access through print, through events, things like that, in a way that actually Meta really struggles with. You have to, I think, build something that covers all kind of channels to go do that, but in a really confined space sometimes. The good news there is it can amplify quite easily, right? You can compound your media quite quickly because it's not a big space that you're covering, rather than trying to do something at a national level where you do need some serious big bucks.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine like frequency, you can get high frequencies quite quickly across multiple channels. So
absolutely, but that comes with challenges too, right? You hit a really high frequency very quickly, effectiveness drops through the floor. You're in a world where you're having to feed creative, and in a small business or a small team, that can be another burden to consider.
Yeah. And I guess as well, attribution must be.
Next question.
Okay.
No, like it's that's a great question. Yeah, I think the approach that I usually take with most attribution is to try and triangulate and not rely on a single methodology, for a few reasons. One, I've never found a perfect methodology, and some of that's because I've worked in smaller businesses without humongous budgets for attribution. The second is that a lot of the high growth businesses, there's so much change in a model, and most attribution models like the notion of developing or defining a baseline, and where there's constant change around, it's harder to go do that. So I typically like to think about it in finding some way to correlate spend and search, or spend and awareness in some easy hacking around a spreadsheet kind of way. How do you hear about us? For me is everything. I know a lot of debate about the efficacy of this. You get decent enough complete rate on those forms, adjust for misattribution, a couple of percent here or there. You can develop very quickly in the baseline, and you get that fuller picture. So where you are talking out of home, direct mail, things that are notoriously hard to track, you do get a better view across the board.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I was having a conversation just this week with a few people that mostly work with digital products. Where you've always been led to believe that the attribution is squeaky clean, but more and more, everyone understands that all the data, the Meta, Google, etc. It's kind of a model data. You can't take it at face value. Obviously, you need to use that to optimize the channel on the day to day. But if you sit on a strategic level, you really need to, exactly as I said, triangulate with all the data, internal data, CRM data, and really see, okay, are things going, everything is going in the right direction? Yes, good. First step done. Second, let's see which one of these channels actually is driving the growth, and that becomes harder, right?
Yeah, and that becomes harder sometimes with the like hyperlocal, because there is just less data. Yeah. Again, if you're working in a business that is building a group or a chain or multiple sites, you can then start to pull data and get a very high level around what's happening. Though you then lose the ability to think about it as location by location, because there are nuances to each of them. They do perform differently based on the demographics in the area and the strategies employed in each site.
Oh, wow. And that's a great segue for my next question that I had lined up, which is the idea of a playbook. Because with more complex, marketing channels or marketing mix, you must be always looking for a playbook, I'd say, to make it easier for you to launch more and more stores. But as you mentioned, each location is going to be slightly different. So how do you approach that and manage that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like here at Creature Comforts, I also think back to kind of Dog Buddy, to like Rover.com, right? That's 8 European markets, 8 countries. Fundamentally, there are some basics there that are pretty unchangeable, but the nuance by country, and then even Creature Comforts by location, and all these clinics are London Southeast. You wouldn't think there's much difference, but there is. I tend to veer from playbook to menu, right? Playbook suggests that you are going page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and it's just, okay, I did that step, I'm on to the next one, I'm on to the next one. Menu makes it more obvious that you are choosing the right things and building that cluster of ideas for that location versus another. So you can go through that idea of, okay, well, yes, all of them have part A. This location needs part B. That doesn't work here, but part C works here. And so you're not going A to Z through left to right. You are picking from that menu to cluster it together. That way, you're kind of, you've tried and tested everything, so as you would per playbook, but you are more conscious of choosing what you activate, whereas playbook feels passive to me. It feels like you're just kind of told what to do and you go through it. So that's typically the approach, and what we built at Dog Buddy and Rover, and what we're in the process of building and learning to build at Creature Comforts.
Okay, that's I'm gonna steal that playbook. Menu instead of playbook. I mean, I like that. Yeah. No, that's thank you. That's quite super interesting. You didn't talk much about community engagement, so I was wondering if is there any activities that you do on that front when you're thinking about, okay, gonna open this new location, how do I activate this community to start talking about this new service?
Yeah, I think that happens. I think threefold for me. There is that kind of online community that does exist in these areas, and how you can tap into that through not influencers in the way that the industry might talk about influencers, but like local voices that have connection in an area, whether that be going through like networking groups, in the pet space, is dog walking groups that exist in this area, and beginning to kind of become part of the community there online. Then there's like actual community, right? Like being able to go out on the streets and talk to people. It's incredible for listening to the customer. You're getting like first-hand, live, verbatim feedback, good and bad, to be able to kind of shape your efforts, not just in marketing, but also product development and service. So yeah, and then once open, beginning to use in the instance of a veterinary clinic, one of the beautiful things about Creature Comforts is that it's more of a members club for pet owners than it is a simple kind of cold clinical environment. These clinics look like beautiful spas and pet health clubs, right? So you are creating a space where people want to come to, and it has enabled the team to use them as community building spaces, right? Portraits, yes, pet pun intended. Christmas decorations, like with paw prints in, bringing artists in to do photography or portraits of your pet, creating a space where people can come to meet other pet owners, begin to talk, and that fosters real community, kind of thing that you wouldn't think of in that environment. I think like it's that again that engenders like great conversation and word of mouth about what not just about the core business, but more about the brand and its values, and community being a big part of that for Creature Comforts. The last thing I kind of relate to that is maybe encouraging word of mouth. Yes, referral programs, right? Yes, incentivizing, whatever. But actually, the delivering on the expectation, if not above the expectation of the customer, breaking the mold there of what they've come to expect within an industry and going above and beyond, gives them something, because of their experience, something natural to go tell others about, which then does that natural word of mouth thing. I think if you can go be a leader in that space, you will drive that as a factor of the service, the product, and that's not a marketing thing, right? That is a core part of the offering. So yeah, I think that's for me. Those are the three things that kind of begin to build that sense of community and a buzz about this.
Okay, that's now obviously to balance that, because when you're building a community, you kind of need to let go some control, I would say, because you start allowing people to, if you're bringing customers in to gather, etc., you're going to lose some control over how your brand is represented. So branding becomes the second big question on that front, where how do you make sure your brand is well represented, even when you're allowing to have some control. Obviously, I guess on a location based company, you're talking about giving control to the venues themselves, to the locations themselves, because they'll have to make some adjustments here, how the Christmas tree, let's say, is decorated for the event. But also, if you're bringing the community in to the location, you're allowing them to interact with your brand elements in a way that, let's be honest, you're not going to be able to plan fully. So how do you keep things, going the right direction that you want them, but without having like very structured borders?
Yeah, I think some of that is about setting out your stall right at the beginning, right, and being really clear, concise, and memorable in what's important, right? So, great example, Creature Comforts, as you get onboarded, part of your onboarding is understanding the brand. I used to sit with the new veterinary teams that are coming in. Anna, who I was on maternity cover for, does a better job at it than I do, and she is in there now as new clinics are opening, bringing that whole team together to talk about where the brand came from, how it's developed, who it is for, in a way that the team understands, they can gravitate around, and becomes part of their knowledge of the business. So building that from the start and setting that core. then it's about guide rails and trust, and it's fluid, right? And you kind of alluded to that, right? It is like you can't set those hard and fast rules when you are in a growing business and with physical locations and members of the public are coming through the door. So you have to embrace the nuance and the chaos a little, but having those guide rails and trusting the team to know what is and isn't on brand. I think like the notion of brand police anywhere, it's just like people hate being told they've done something wrong, and I guarantee having had to wear that hat before, it's no fun for the brand police either, right? Having to always go to people being like, no, not like that, that's not how that works. So instead, being in a world where you can, after the fact, reflect on what's happened, help them understand how you might have made different choices and why, when putting it all into context, rather than like jumping on it heavy-handed or requiring approval for everything, which just like kills all creativity and involvement. The other thing I'd say as well, like in multi-location, getting a prime example from Rover and Creature Compass as well, is that you can go and execute something in one location, it works, there's a buzz about it, everyone's excited. Another location can kind of spur off that and go, we could do the same thing here. We might change this, we might tweak this, but be able to kind of build repeatable activity that has worked in one place and take it to another is a real benefit that you have here. And some of those community building activities, exactly that, when they work, the brand celebrates them and they become part of that menu, part of that toolkit. And if they don't, there is a conversation as to why, but it's not heavy-handed. It is on the understanding that everyone's gone into what they did with the best intention. If you kind of have that mindset, just trying to do the right thing, you can help them make it better. If you go in thinking like they were trying to ruin the business, then you're not going to have a pleasant conversation. Yeah. That for me is like quite hands off, but being able to reflect on what was the right choice and not after the fact.
Interesting. So basically, I think here is a hypothesis that I'll bring right away from that is you're trying to bring the local teams as owner or / responsible for the success or lack of the location they're in, right? So they and then you can give them, here's the menu of activities, which one would you like to partake, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's also different models you can work in here as well, with like what activity might sit centrally and is like disseminated versus what activity comes up through the team. And like my viewpoint here is that actually it's best with both worlds. There's actually some stuff that is far better coordinated from a central support team or an HQ, and then things that are grassroots that come up. You kind of cover all bases that way.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And now we spoke quite a lot about Creature Comforts because it's the most recent. How does it compare to other location-based business like Rover, for example, or Secret Cinema, or even Treatwell? What are the main differences that you see across all of these? Obviously, they're affecting different types of verticals, but they still have one big common thing, which is they're very location driven. You need to have the supply. You need to have an event happening in a specific area to make sense for you to market it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Right, they are all the businesses dictated by this location nuance, but the model behind each of them is quite different. So like Treatwell, they're not Treatwell salons, right? They are an independent business that is joining the marketplace. Dog Buddy Rover, like that's an individual in their home anywhere in the country or across Europe and into the States. Like you have no bearing on that, and they are their own person, right? You are not employing that workforce. Yeah. Versus like the clinics, right? And, a vet clinic needs major investment in a building and everything else that goes with it, and you have more control there over what happens versus what might happen within a true marketplace. But those nuances of location, same across the board. You're having to think about where is the catchment of the area that you want to go cover. How do you think about geofencing? How do you think about where some areas might begin to overlap, and there's potential cannibalization or conflict? So there's all those things still play true across almost all those location-based businesses, but the model behind it might start to tweak how you think about it.
Yeah, interesting. Uh, for a recent client, we actually had similar. So it was location based, and one of the suggestions were, for example, it was based in the States. So let's get more clinics in New York, for example. So that way we could increase our targeting for the state level, and suddenly we unlock certain strategies on digital channels that we wouldn't have in any other way, right? So that's something that you can play as well on that when you're trying to to think about your strategy and location approach as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That notion of critical mass, right, becomes interesting. So, same as Treatwell, right? Like a single salon, you don't have the liquidity in the marketplace to make that work, right? If all they do is balayage, and you want to go in for a wax, well, that doesn't work. So you need kind of critical mass of services there. Also, with that variety, price point difference, open times differ, all that. Can you begin to cater for it? And then, as a result, your search campaign that was literally the brand name of that one salon can then turn into service-based balayage and wax in that area, because you can cater to that search volume, and it has a direct impact on conversion. Right, the product is then viable for everyone in that market. So yeah, that mass work. Same eventually will happen with something like Creature Comforts. You can stop doing location around a clinic and start thinking pan London. So yeah, same thing with Dog Body, not just London. Open into more markets, you can do the whole of UK. So yeah, that location strategy becomes quite important, and there's probably a handshake between operations and marketing there to go strike that balance right and think about liquidity within the market or within a business.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Thank you for that. Now, you mentioned now one thing that I'll have to go a little bit deeper as well. So, cooperation between marketing and operations. You've been doing some fractional slash, maternity cover roles now. How do you build that trust, that relationship quickly when you have, a couple of days on a week, or even like a few months that you're going to be able to do it?
Yeah, I feel like let's use maternity cover as a case study here. In a normal job, you might be forgiven or allowed 3 months to onboard and understand the business well. Forget it. If you're on a 9-month maternity cover, that's a third of your time. You can't do that, and before you know it, you're in the last third where you're thinking about wrapping things up to hand back over. Doesn't work. You got to compress that 3 months into 3 weeks. That means being, I think, really purposeful about who you talk to and those conversations. In your kind of 3-month example, maybe they're casual, maybe they happen over a longer period of time, the chats are hi, nice to meet you, then you may talk about work a few weeks later. You kind of have to be all business with this, be purposeful and intentional about those. We've got an hour today, I'm going to pick your brain on these 5 things. This is what I need from you to be able to learn what's important. I think that trust building piece is key. I'd say maybe unfairly, if you've been around the block, you have a CV that you might be able to wave in front of people and say, look, I have done this before. Like, I have been in these places. Somebody thinks I know what I'm talking about. Please trust me. Like that can buy you some of the way. But I try to consciously, again, interim good example of striking a balance between delivering against the strategic priorities that you've agreed on the way in and some quick wins. right? So you're in a world where you can identify quickly the problems, and you're probably pattern matching from previous experience to be able to go, well, I can fix that. I know what's wrong here. I'll have a dig into that and have a look. Fix. To be able to demonstrate to those around you, like, oh, the new guy seems to know what he's doing. And you're like, yes, I do. Now let's talk about the bigger stuff. That can sometimes be kind of a way in. I would also say, and you and I have worked together, so feel free to correct me here, that building a environment and a like team morale, right, that is open and is honest and like fun as well. Like you have to kind of create that space to be able to go in, and everyone starts to lower their inhibitions with that. Beer helps, but like generally, like people being able to kind of relax into it intrinsically builds that trust. Just like, oh, they're part of the team. They're here with me. They're riding side by side. They're dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. So that creature coming in. What are the big problems that are in your team? Help me understand them. I might be able to help you. How do they correlate with the problems I know, or the problems or priorities that I know that are sitting within the marketing and sales function? How do we fix these together? For me, getting to a place where you are comfortable with each other makes those conversations so much easier. So yeah, I guess get in fast, be really purposeful about what you need to know to do your job, and then go heavy on the relationship building. And yeah, PS beer helps.
PS beer. Yeah, yeah, definitely the beer helps. It's interesting to deal with that when you're working remotely now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just chatting before, I'm currently in a 100% remote role, so it's harder to do the social piece. But it just means, again, we're talking about being intentional. Like we have an hour on our call today, 10 minutes of it, we're just going to talk about each other and our families and what's happening and favorite British things to talk about, the weather, whatever it may be. Like you spend time doing that because that helps build the rapport, and that's not wasted time. You could happily look at that and say, well, it wasn't work. But in a world where you can't do that at the pub or at the coffee machine or on your walk to get lunch, like you have to build time to go do that, and it might feel wasteful, but in experience it pays dividends.
Yeah, I feel for me it's always about there's especially when you're leading a team, there are gonna be hard moments that you're gonna make the hard ask of your team members or someone from a different team, and if you don't build the rapport before, that let's say that if you don't put money on that account when that time comes, they might get it done because they have to, but your reputation is going to be slightly damaged on the business as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, isn't it better for everyone to be sitting there thinking, this guy, this gal, whoever it is here with me. They've earned my respect. I know they respect me. They've asked me to do something, but they're rolling their sleeves up and they're there to support me, to do it with me, to take half that burden, whatever it may be, because you've related in some way that you are all on the same team. You're trying to do the best thing for each other, for the business, for the customer, whoever it may be. But yeah, I agree with you. Like you have to build that. You have to earn that. It's not a given. Just because you job title that you think you might command it doesn't work. You got to build it.
Yeah. Okay, bit of a side quest here. Knowing more about team management. Going slightly back towards the building a brand menu and activities menu to launch a brand. Um, Going to touch on a different thing where you worked with quite a few, I'd call them early stage. Obviously, took a few of them, to quite a far off stage, like Treatwell, for example, Dog Buddy, which then became Rover, and even I'm sure if I would call Secret Cinema small, but they've been around for quite a while. But how do you approach, creating the brand storytelling when the awareness isn't there. So you have to build something almost from scratch. How do you go about that?
A deep breath first, like
Yeah, that's a
right, and then no,
drink
and then
water.
a plunge in. No, I feel like this is a great question, Thiago. Those finding those connections with the customer and uh, understanding them at a level where you can begin to let's say emotionally relate, for me is where that begins, right? So take Dog Buddy again, not big budgets at all. like and I came in, the business has been around 18 months, 2 years or so, had kind of formed through a merger, starting to kind of find its feet, but really wanted to kind of galvanize a team, go figure out exactly who we should be going after and tell a better story. And for me, that came to piece of research, go figure out who these people are, who's most interested in us, what they care about, 'cause not always what you think they care about or what you might care about as a brand, and getting to the point of understanding, oh, they don't care about um, how friendly a pet sitter is. They don't care about necessarily how close the pet sitter is, but actually the thing that they care about is how reliable a pet sitter is. I've booked them, are they actually going to show up? And there is I won't name names, there's a well-known player in the space who has a very different business model, done tremendous work on notoriety. But what we heard in that research was, I can never guarantee it's going to happen, and that's the job I'm hiring you to go do. So for us, it's like taking that and saying, well, that's the story we tell, right? And if we keep telling that story in different ways and in a repeatable way to the audience that we know that wants to hear it, we can start that groundswell. And that comes through those earned channels like PR, when you can go get it, be clever about how you tell that story, but also the own channels, right? So on social and on email, like how do you keep telling that story over and over and over and build that notion and hold that place in the consumer's mind of, oh, Dogberry is about being a reliable pet sitter. Oh, fantastic. I like reliability. That's what I'm hiring for. I'm going to go after that brand. You, when you're lucky, budgets come and you can go tell that story in bigger ways, but it's probably the same kernel that that you're building off there. Big fancy TV ad about being reliable, or that social story where it's a quick TikTok cut together of talking heads about their dog sitting experience with you, whatever that may be. It's the same strand that runs through there, and that I can't emphasize enough the importance of consistency in that. And once you've found that nugget, it's just being able to repeat it in creative ways over and over and over to build that notion of, that's what we care about. Turns out it's also what you care about, and beginning to kind of tell that story that people want to hear.
Mhm. So now, quick question on that side. When you talk about consistency, you're talking about consistency of the message of the story, not so much about the formats that you're telling the story, like language, etc.
Correct. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Like your brand purist in me would you say that everything has to sit within, like, you've got the
That's why.
guidelines,
That's why
make
the
sure you're
question.
doing it right. But channels do have nuance to it, right? That actually the best way of making something like TikTok work is being native to the platform, is telling that story in a TikTok-esque way, which may well be different from your £500,000 TV ad, right? But the narrative is still the same. The message is still the same that you have there. You're the consumer. You've got this problem. We care about solving that problem. We're on the same page here. Let's go. TikTok, maybe that's a piece of training audio and meme-esque storytelling of reliability in that instance. With the TVI, maybe more polished, pulling on some heartstrings and think, but it's the same message in there. I think there is a place to go do that, but yeah, good question. There's a balance to be struck. You go too far off that, it doesn't feel like the same brand anymore. It's art, not science, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty much. Yeah, it's although marketing is considered a science, it's not really pure science, is it? But like any human sciences.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we've been going on for some time now. You at the start, before we start recording, you mentioned that you joined a new place. Do you want to disclose anything about that yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently joined a business called Context Travel. It's actually, business is almost 25 years old now, and did a tremendous job of weathering COVID and coming out the side and rebuilding. But the business is expert-led tours in some of the world's most amazing locations. So it's 60 places around the world. So not just getting the spotty teenager dragging you around the Colosseum, right? This is a adjunct professor of archaeology walking you around the Colosseum. So beginning to understand what you're seeing, what you're experiencing on a deeper cultural level, on an intellectual level. So yeah, really built for the curious traveler. So yeah, I've been here 6 weeks now, so still early days. As we alluded to earlier, 100% remote. So an incredible challenge to get up to speed with a legacy business, right? 20-something years old, but has like the spirit of a startup and the budgets of a startup too. So it's really trying to figure out how we elevate the brand, take it to its next point in evolution, and deliver a digital experience that matches the exceptional tour experiences. We're talking 91 NPS, 4.9 average review score. This is incredible experience, and just trying to revitalize the brand to kind of make it live up to those high expectations of the consumer.
Exciting. I'm looking forward to see what you guys do. So thanks so much for your time. One last thing. If people want to hear more from you, know what you're thinking, what you're working on, where they can find you.
LinkedIn's the best place to find me. linkedin.com/in/Simon Le Grice.
All right, cool, perfect. I'll make sure to add that to the to the descriptions. But yeah, thanks so much, Simon. Really great talking to you, catching up after 12 years knowing each other and seeing each other on events here and there. It's been a tremendous pleasure.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. Cheers, bud.